I'd like to introduce Maria Flynn.
So I want to just start by talking about the fact that I feel we're at a very critical time in our country. I think, as we all know, the issues surrounding jobs are really at the heart of many of our national conversations. We've seen the official unemployment rate fall to historic 18-year lows, but I think we all know that those numbers don't tell the whole story, right? They fail to tell the story of the experiences of millions of real people throughout America who, as FDR said, are looking for a better world beyond the horizon. In the meantime, we also have competing narratives about the impact of automation and the future of work, right? We've all been kind of inundated with reports and meetings and discussions about the future of work and robots and what's going to happen, right? So lots of discussion. And I think what I'd like to make these 2 days about and make it different is to really start talking about action and what do we need to do differently. But let's kind of zoom in on the jobs issue just for a few minutes. So for the first time on record, this was reported about a week ago, the number of job openings in the US exceeds the number of unemployed Americans. First time on record that that's happened. So theoretically, that means that there's more jobs than people to fill them. The national unemployment rate is 3.8%, and employers have added jobs for a record 92 months in a row. But I think we know, especially those of us who work in this space, that the percentage of discouraged workers, the folks who have given up and stopped looking for work, really brings that unemployment rate much closer to 8%. And I think we all know, and we really believe at JFF, that we have a lot more to do to truly engage the untapped talent in America. Last month, the Federal Reserve, and I know we've got some folks from the Federal Reserve with us here today, they issued a report on the economic well-being of US households. And an article that I read that described kind of how that report was talking about America, I think it described it really well. It said it was telling the story of two Americas barely cohabitating within the same borders. And I think that that's a point that gets overlooked kind of too much in a lot of these conversations. So we know that not everybody is benefiting equally from this economic recovery. So almost a quarter of US workers earn poverty-level wages. So that's 1 in 4 workers in America earn poverty-level wages. A full 50% of Hispanic working parents are living below 200% of federal poverty. That means half of Hispanic parents are earning less than $50,000 a year. That number is a little over 40% for black families and just about 20% for white families. So meanwhile, if you think, okay, you have a family of 4 living on less than $50,000 a year. If you're living in cities like LA, Boston, DC, the average price of renting a 2-bedroom apartment in areas like that is over $30,000 a year. So how does that compute, right, if you're trying to live on less than $50,000? Meanwhile, according to the US Census Bureau, the share of national income held by middle-class households has decreased to 43%. So that means that the middle class in America makes less than half of our nation's total income. So the middle class earns less than half of our nation's total income. So it's the lowest that it's been since the agency started collecting that data back in 1967. Middle-class wages have grown just 6%, while low-wage workers' wages have actually decreased by 5% since 1979. So it's really clear to me, and hopefully to all of you, that the good news stories that we often hear about the unemployment rate and the booming economy really often whitewash a lot of the deeper issues. So here's the question I'd like us all to think about as we kind of embark on this journey together, which is, what path are we embarking on? So we now have the technology and we have large new economy companies that have the potential to bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots in our country. Or the same companies can broaden it, frankly. I think automation, technology, new contract arrangements are changing the very nature of work and demanding highly skilled and adaptable workers. In the face of these changes, we know that many people lack the education and training employers require today let alone tomorrow. So if we're already not doing the best job as a country, how are we going to kind of transform ourselves to keep up with this change that's coming so quickly? So let's talk, together about how are we going to prepare people for the future of work and the ongoing challenge of trying to really create economic advancement for all. So I want to challenge us to think along two lines of thinking. So first, how will we restructure learning and work to ensure that everyone can advance in today's economy and thrive in tomorrow's? Second, how do we look at ourselves, so each of us and the jobs that we do, whether we sit in a community college or a corporation or a nonprofit, and really challenge ourselves to do things differently in order to serve that mission? So I think we all know, from personal experience, that when change comes, we tend to kind of narrow our gaze. But I really want to challenge us to really lift that gaze and look towards that horizon and really think, how can each of us look at our jobs differently in order to really make a difference? So within those questions, how do we think about how resources, money, and technology are invested? How do we deliver content in new ways? How do we do a better job of connecting workers to careers? And how do all of us, each of us, lead differently in the face of change? So I think we have to realize that the future of work just isn't happening to someone else, right? It's happening to all of us. And so as much pressure as the changing nature of work is putting on workers, I think we need to accelerate our own change as well. So as I mentioned before, FDR talked about people are searching for a better life, a better world beyond the horizon. And I think that we all need to focus on that horizon as well. And so when I became president and CEO of JFF about a year and a half ago, I laid out my New Horizons vision for the organization. And personally, when I envision a horizon, I think it means that we're not staying where we are. We're adventuring, we're setting a goal. And at JFF, we really talk about kind of the moonshot of our time, and that our ultimate goal is to create a future where automation, economic mobility, and dignified work are equal partners in the American dream. So I really want all of us, and what I love about this group is that we do have a phenomenal mix of folks here in the audience. And so how can we really be thinking and working across sectors and across systems to think boldly, to act inclusively, and to really dream big? So I also want to take just a few minutes to talk about kind of where we are at JFF today. So as many of you might know, 2018 is JFF's 35th anniversary. And I'm really honored that our co-founder Hillary Pennington is here with us today. And you're going to have the opportunity to hear from her at around 12:30 or so today. So I think Hillary is here. If I could just ask her to stand. And if you could all just join me in giving Hillary a round of applause. Thank you for being here. And when Hillary and her co-founder Arthur White, who was a wonderful man who passed away a few years ago at the age of 90, really after making just a wonderful impact on many individuals and organizations. But back in 1983, they were sensing a lot of the same issues that we're sensing now, that the skill needs were changing, that there was a disconnect between the supply and demand sides of the labor market. And they knew that the future was going to be more different than they could imagine. And that's something that I always loved about Arthur, that we got to spend quite a bit of time together the last 2 years of his life. And he was always thinking about that next thing, that next innovation, that next technology that was going to come down the pike. But now we're living that future. We're living that future that they had their eye towards in 1983. And I think now that we need to look at that next horizon and realize that a lot more remains to be done. Many of us, including myself, have been in this work for decades, right? And I think there's a lot of ways where we've made great progress, and there's a lot of ways where we need to keep at it and probably start doing things a bit differently. So really, since becoming CEO, I've looked at how to reposition JFF to be most effective at this critical crossroads in time. We're really revisiting how we do our work through new partnerships by looking at innovation, collaboration, new partners, and we're really building on what I feel are our core strengths of design, scale, and influence. And we're working to find ways to leverage our networks and to drive more conversations like these, where we can kind of use our convening power and our reputation as a convener to drive these kinds of conversations. So we've also launched recently something new called JFF Labs, which is our new innovation engine at JFF. And this is really strongly built on my belief that we have to drive the transformational change that's needed. And that's the only way that we're really going to combat some of the issues that stand in the way of us achieving our vision for economic advancement for all. So as we all look beyond the horizon, I think we have to look beyond our traditional lanes, right? We all kind of try to, play our part and stay in our lane, but I think as change is coming faster, we're really looking at JFF Labs to really continue JFF's legacy role of bridging K-12, post-secondary, and higher ed, but also then expanding it to bring in technology solutions and entrepreneurs and investors. And so the crowd here today, really represents kind of that expansion kind of our tent, so to speak. And in order to really drive the kinds of large-scale changes that I think that we need to do to achieve economic advancement for everybody, I feel all these players need to be working together and aligning and not working in silos or at odds with each other. So that's what we're shooting for. So, kind of in closing, each of us at JFF, and I have a wonderful team I hope you get to meet over our time together, we really join all of you in thinking boldly about our mission, right? Our collective mission and all the work that remains to be done. And I really hope that we take from New Orleans not only a sense of purpose, but some new passion for our work and the ability to really think about our work in new ways, and some inspiration, frankly, that we're all in this together, right? We might be kind of looking at these issues from different angles, but in the end, we're really driving towards the same goal. And how can we really collaborate to truly build a future that works? So I think that's our challenge, and I want to thank you for being part of this important fight. I think it's more important now than ever, and I really think the horizon awaits us all. So thanks for being here.